Hey, what's up everybody? Chad Calek here, and welcome back to the In a Crowded Room podcast, where for the first time in 8 long months, we are going to do a Q&A. There is a stack of questions, really good stuff this time, as there should be, right? That's a long time to keep track of questions and to pick the best and the most interesting questions, I believe. And you guys know how I do this. I pretty much source these questions from everywhere, from Instagram, Facebook, direct messages, from the comments on previous episodes. And I do my best to answer the most common questions as well as the most unique and interesting. So there's a lot here. So I will jump into it right now, and we will move through these as quickly as I can. So here we go. Jenna C. from Grand Junction, Colorado says, "Hey Chad, what do you think about the medical history of David Grusch being leaked? Also, do you really think he would lie knowing that he could go to jail for perjury if he was caught lying?" Well, first thing is first, when it comes to his medical history, I did look into that, and the only people that are saying that it was leaked, his medical history, really is Grusch, Corbell, George Knapp, but the author of the story, the journalist that wrote the article that discussed his PTSD and his alcoholism and his suicidal tendencies, he claimed that all of that information that he got through a FOIA request. Which, let me say this, I think it sucks that anybody would use, PTSD, against a soldier, or even alcoholism or anything like that. Life's tough. People go through really difficult times. I don't care who you are. None of that stuff would make me believe him any less or any more. And PTSD, man, if somebody's going to use that against him, that's unnecessarily cruel and very, shallow. So none of those things made me believe him any less or any more. But unfortunately, when you put yourself out there, especially like he has, you're going to have people digging in your past, especially with, his past and the stories that he gave the world. That's always the double-edged sword to notoriety or fame or anything like that. People are going to dig, and they're going to find out anything and everything there is to find out about you once your name gets out there. And this is a guy that went from being completely unknown to known worldwide, like in the course of a night. So I'm sure his life has dramatically changed. And he may believe that, somebody leaked his information, but I haven't seen anything to say that is in fact the case. And as a former working journalist for 6 years, whenever stories like this come out, that's the first thing you do is you just start digging in their past. So he should have expected this, I would think. But I do, again, want to stress it's terrible if anybody is trying to say you can't believe him because he's had suicidal thoughts or bouts with addiction or alcoholism or PTSD. To me, that stuff just makes him human, As far as, do I really think he would lie knowing he could go to jail for perjury if he was caught? It's not that I even think he's lying. I certainly never said that. I don't think he's lying or telling the truth. I don't look at it that way. I just look at it as, what can you prove? You know what I mean? He could very well believe every last word of what he's saying and be completely incorrect. I just think you have to have proof. I hate the saying, exceptional claims require exceptional evidence. And no, it doesn't require exceptional evidence or exceptional proof. It just requires evidence or proof. And he just hasn't presented any. And what's even more, how can I say this? What's even more of a letdown is that after all that talk in Congress of him saying, yes, I can give you all this information, but we'd have to be in a skiff. He said this over and over again to AOC, Tim Burchett, like you name it. He just kept saying, in a private setting, in a skiff, I could share this information. I could tell you where the alien spacecraft are and the people who have worked on these programs, etc., right? Well, I don't know if you guys saw this or not. The media did not want to pick up on this part of the story. But when that congressional hearing was over, right away, Tim Burchett tried to get into a skiff with David Grusch, in which somebody from this is according to Tim Burchett, somebody from the intelligence department division, somebody called and shut it down, and they told Tim Burchett, according to him, we don't know what Grusch is talking about, but he does not have clearance to speak about the things that he said he did have clearance to speak about with you. So that got completely shut down. Now, I bring that up because that's kind of the answer to your question. Also, do I think he would lie? Well, if he was intentionally lying, it's almost a perfect lie to tell because who's going to prove it, right? It's all classified information. So if he says, I know of these things, and they're like, well, prove it. Well, I can't list rent a skiff. Okay, we have a skiff. Now somebody calls and shuts that down. So there's no one to prove the lie, if it is a lie. It just remains kind of out there in the open. That's why no one's heard anything since that congressional hearing, because he hasn't spoken to anybody. He hasn't given the names and, pointed to the smoking gun, or he hasn't told anybody where the bodies are, so to speak. So I have no reason to believe that he's just a blatant liar, but I have no reason yet to believe anything that he said. Until he can really bring the info out, there's not much to talk about. So, but moving on. Okay, Jessica Wellen from Early, Texas says, Dear Mr. Calek, I wonder if you have ever asked Jeremy Corbell to be a guest on the In a Crowded Room podcast. I would give anything to see you sit down face to face with him. You and I both. I have not invited him. I should. He follows me on Instagram, and I follow him as well. I think I might do that. I just saw him. He was just on Rogan yesterday, and the amount of absolute bullshit that came from this guy, it was painful to watch. In fact, you know what? I'm going to show you guys this clip. George Knapp and Jeremy Corbell appeared again on Rogan. And, remember the USS Russell footage. That is the triangle footage, which is clearly a bokeh. And this is something that Corbell would absolutely know as a professional filmmaker, and specifically as a cinematographer. Like, Corbell saying, I don't know what a bokeh is, would be like a jiu-jitsu guy saying, I don't know what a gi is. You know what I mean? Like, there's no way Corbell doesn't know what a bokeh is, okay? There's no possible way he doesn't know. All right, now, keep that in mind. As I play this clip here, I'm going to stop it after each line of BS and interject. I want you to see just how bad this goes for him. Because he's backtracking, because he's caught in a bunch of BS. And at the very end, you'll see George Knapp try to save him. And Knapp even ends up looking like an idiot as well. So check this clip out.
And it happens more regularly than our Navy would like to admit. That there are unknown objects in the South China Sea, out by Japan, off the East Coast, and as recently, I'll say, as this year.
Okay, stop right there. None of that's proven. How would Corbell have any idea of the total number of UAP sightings are being recorded by the Navy throughout the world? How would he possibly know that? Either he wouldn't, or he's just repeating BS that he's heard from somebody, or he's trying to make himself look as though he's just in the know. Because, in my opinion, he's getting ready to try to sell you something. Keep watching.
What was the video, or was it just photographic, of the triangles in the sky?
So that's a big topic of debate.
This is not a big topic of debate. It's settled. It's a bokeh.
So what is it, Sam? Is it a flying triangle alien?
Well, it seems to grow and shrink like an iris is adjusting or something like that. That's what I see. Okay, so this guy literally held his phone up to his night vision monocular, all right? And those little white specks are the sensor of this night vision camera, kind of fritzing out a little bit with noise. Okay, I see a bokeh. Bokeh's, okay, so when you see something that's out of focus in the background, basically it's the shape of the iris of a lens. All the light is forced through the iris that's in front of your sensor. And whatever the shape of that iris is the shape your bokeh is going to be. Seems like this is maybe a triangular iris.
Three-bladed iris.
A three-bladed iris.
Now we're all used to circles because our lenses have circular apertures. And in fact, the more expensive the lens, the more blades on the aperture, so it becomes rounder and it doesn't have like a hexagon stop sign shape. But the cheaper lenses have less aperture blades. And really cheap lenses, you only need like 3 blades, you know? Zoop, 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 zoop. It's cheap and it's easy. You're not worried about trying to make a nice bokeh in the background. You just need to open and close the aperture. And this is a infrared camera. And so the lens in this camera is cheap.
Yeah, you're right. It's literally just the bokeh. Okay, so there's nothing special about this at all. How is this even newsworthy?
This is the thing that kind of makes me angry. It's like, this is so obviously just out of focus footage. This is going through newsrooms, and like, these are professionals that work with cameras, and you can immediately tell what's going on, and then they purposefully kind of cover it up so they can act like it's something interesting to talk about. There's absolutely nothing special about this.
It's a bokeh. That's what it is.
Right? So that was from the USS Russell. So on the USS Russell, let's say I have one person that comes to me.
That's these things.
Right. So the common wisdom is that they were, oh, dude, thank you actually for this opportunity to explain this. So check it out. You see optically a triangle shape.
Right.
Okay, that's the radar footage from the Omaha. So you see optically the triangle shape. Now, people said I made it up, that I made up pyramid in shape. Now, I put that in quotes when I first reported on it.
When he first reported this, he didn't tell the public, these may or may not be pyramids, these may or may not be triangles. He told everybody the USS Russell was swarmed by pyramids. Want to see the proof? Here it is.
What are we looking at here?
Yeah, so I obtained and released videos and photographic evidence of UFOs swarming our warships. So the green video is night vision. That's from the USS Russell. It wasn't just one pyramid-shaped craft. It was multiple. These were swarms. This is explosive information. This is probably the best UFO military filmed footage certainly that I've ever seen, but I think also that the world has ever seen. The U.S. Navy photographed and filmed pyramid-shaped UFOs, or commonly called UAPs now, and advanced transmedium vehicles. There were a number of anomalous contacts, or what they call UAPs or UFOs, that swarmed these carriers, that swarmed these destroyers.
The Pentagon has confirmed a strange and unexpected sight captured by Navy personnel off the coast of California. The video shows flying pyramid-shaped objects hovering above the USS Russell and another warship.
Creator and editor of ExtraordinaryBeliefs.com, Jeremy Corbell, joins us now. Jeremy, incredible vision. What sets this apart from other UFO sightings captured in the past?
Yeah, it's a pleasure, David and Nat. Nice to be with you. Nice to be with you, Australia. This is a truly global story. What separates this footage compared to other UFO footage you might see is that the U.S. Navy photographed and filmed these pyramid-shaped UFOs and transmedium vehicles. Because that's what was in the intelligence reports that happened to pass in front of our eyes. That they have other sensors and that this thing was pyramid in shape.
Play it, Jamie.
Triangle by angle of observation.
It ends right after this. I was just trying to get to the pyramids.
I just want it like this, see it moving around. Why is it flashing? Do they know?
So that's the whole thing. So there's people that work in these UFO programs that did a full report on this, none of which is really public. So the internet says that this is bokeh effect. So like the lens on the PVS-14, somebody taped a triangle onto it. So what you're seeing is a lens artifact.
Okay, that is another line of bullshit. Nobody on the internet says that someone taped a triangle on a lens. It just sounds stupid to say it. So that's why he says, so the internet says, no, that's BS. People who use lenses in their job every day, like you, Jeremy Corbell, knew immediately that this was a bokeh. Again, nobody taped a triangle to anything. Nobody did.
And then in Congress, they backtracked from it because they realized the PVS-14 doesn't have a triangle aperture to make a shape of a pyramid-looking thing. And they said it was the camera that was being shot through. They actually did that in the first congressional UFO hearing, and say that it was that.
Congress never backtracked off of anything. Congress explained exactly what happened, which the footage is right here of Congress explaining that it was a bokeh effect.
In this video, U.S. Navy personnel recorded what appears to be triangles, some flashing, off the coast of the United States. This was recorded while the U.S. Navy ship observed a number of small unmanned aerial systems in the area. And importantly, the video was taken through night vision goggles with a single lens reflex camera. These remained unresolved for several years. Several years later, and off a different coast, U.S. Navy personnel, again in a swarm of unmanned aerial systems, and again through night vision goggles and an SLR camera, recorded this image. But this time, other U.S. Navy assets also observed unmanned aerial systems nearby, and we're now reasonably confident that these triangles correlate to unmanned aerial systems in the area. The triangular appearance is a result of light passing through the night vision goggles and then being recorded by an SLR camera.
They never backtracked off anything. That's what I'm saying. There's no debate over what this is. Congress explained that this was in fact a bokeh. And if you noticed, he never answered Joe about the flashing light.
Why is it flashing? Do they know?
So that's the whole thing. So there's people that work in these UFO programs that did a full report on this, none of which is really public.
The reason he didn't is because the light flashes once per second, exactly like FAA lights flash, 1 time per second. See, that's why this shit gets so frustrating, man. It's obvious that the USS Russell footage is a big old fat nothing burger.
So to back up, we don't know the shape of it. George and I don't know. It wasn't just one pyramid-shaped craft. It was multiple. These were swarms. All we know is that in briefing documents that we were exposed to, and they have other sensor systems to determine shape, they said triangle by angle of observation, pyramid in shape. So I can't justify to the public the shape.
Okay, if you can't justify it to the public, then why did you go tell the public that they were flying pyramids?
The U.S. Navy photographed and filmed these pyramid-shaped UFOs and transmedium vehicles. So I can't justify to the public the shape because it's just, if they change their mind, hopefully they tell George.
Mm-hmm. Here's the other part that people leave out of this discussion. They say it's bokeh effect. It's actually showing stars in the sky. They leave out this little inconvenient fact is that they have a rangefinder on the ship. These things were 700 feet off the deck of the ship. If it was a star, it would have fried Earth into a cinder if it was 700 feet away. It's not a star.
And here's George Knapp to the rescue. And guys, I gotta tell you, this is really frustrating to watch because what Knapp is saying right here is so incredibly ridiculous. It just makes it next to impossible for me to trust anything out of his mouth after hearing this word wizardry. When he discusses the world being burnt to a cinder here, what he's referring to is a couple of videos that I've seen in which skeptics point out that the stars in the night sky also become triangles with the bokeh effect, which if you look at the screen right now, you can see this being demonstrated. It's just being shown that any point of light would become a triangle from a bokeh effect created by a three-bladed aperture. And as far as the rangefinder being 700 feet, all that's saying is that the camera is trying to focus on something 700 feet away. So anything beyond that is going to appear blurred. And that's why the stars in the sky would take on the shape of a triangle. So I don't know why he mentions this, because absolutely nobody online has suggested that 700 feet off the deck of the USS Russell was a star. A star that suddenly looked like a triangle UFO due to a bokeh effect. But yet he's acting like that's an argument. Like people online are saying, oh, it's not a UFO. It's actually a star 700 feet away. Nobody's suggesting that because it's ridiculous. And this is my problem in general with these guys. They don't seem interested in the truth. And I think the reason they're not interested in the truth because the truth doesn't serve them at all. For example, Corbell keeps saying, well, we saw this slide, and the slide said that it looked like a triangle and it was shaped like a pyramid. That's what the slide said, so that's what I reported. That's the problem. You are a filmmaker, and specifically, you're a cinematographer, which you should have known immediately something is really weird here, which this is pointed out in the corridor video. When you see Sam immediately sit down and go, wait a minute, I see a bokeh.
And those little white specks are the sensor of this night vision camera, kind of fritzing out a little bit with noise. Okay, I see a bokeh.
I find it very hard to believe that Corbell didn't also see a bokeh right away. But that's not a story that serves them.
This is so obviously just out of focus footage. This is going through newsrooms, and like these are professionals that work with cameras, and you can immediately tell what's going on, and then they purposefully kind of cover it up so they can act like it's something interesting to talk about.
It's not that I don't want to believe. I want to believe. I want to believe badly. But I want to believe in the truth, not what serves George Knapp and Jeremy Corbell.
This is probably the best UFO military filmed footage certainly that I've ever seen, but I think also that the world has ever seen.
There's nothing special about this at all. How is this even newsworthy? It's literally just the bokeh.
There's absolutely nothing special about this.
Anyways, enough about Corbell. Let's move on. Okay, Kimmy Barlow from Brooklyn, New York says, hello, Chad. First and foremost, thank God you're home now and recovering. Thank you very much, Kim. My question is, after a deep dive online, I noticed that in addition to appearing on such paranormal shows like Coast to Coast, you also seem to be the only paranormal investigator that I know that regularly appears on comedy-based or mainstream radio shows, talk shows, and podcasts. I've seen you on Tyra, and you've been watching us for a long time. If you saw on Tyra Banks, that was fun. And I've heard you on the Jim Norton show on Sirius, The Fighter and the Kid, and others. So my first question, I was wondering if you know why other known paranormal investigators seem to only appear on paranormal-themed shows, and why you do a wider variety. There's another question here, but I'll get to that in a second. I can't speak for other paranormal investigators. I mean, I can give you my theory. The reason I do it is I just like variety. I like meeting new people and reaching new people, and I guess I view my work more as a documentarian, than I am a paranormal investigator. So, like when people ask me, what do you do for a living? I tell them I'm a filmmaker. I guess I don't have a fear of any of those shows either. And what I mean by that is, I've never faked anything in my life, ever, when it comes to paranormal investigating. So I have no problem going on, for hours and talking to anybody about anything that I've done, or pulling any footage up, or talking about anything. Now, I'm not going to point out names or point fingers, but it's pretty obvious where the paranormal shows went over the last decade. It was fakery at a ridiculous level. And my guess, this is just a guess, is that a lot of these guys that are faking stuff for a living, they're lying for a living. So do they really want to go on, a 3-hour podcast and go over their work? I think you could probably look at the people that are named or known in the paranormal field, and if they're not showing up to, be openly questioned, then maybe there's a reason why. Also, I've been blessed with an amazing team. I have the best executive producer alive. I have an amazing manager, an incredible team, and I'm not beholden to a network. So I don't have, anything that I have to sell or pitch, or I don't have to be careful with what I say. A lot of these other personalities that are, employed by a network, especially those who are faking things and lying to the public every week about what they're doing, the network doesn't want them going on, these long talk shows, and they don't want to put them in a spot where they can be outed. I know that for a fact. But that would be also my guess as to why you don't see a lot of people doing shows like The Fatter and the Kid, or doing stuff like Tyra or anything like that. Okay, also, I was wondering if given the opportunity to do a para-podcast, a mainstream podcast, or a comedy podcast, what is your preference? I don't really have one. They're all different. The only thing I would say, when you do the comedy podcast, you kind of got to be prepared for their shtick. A comedian's job is to make people laugh. Some are really good at doing that with being just quick-witted and with physical humor, and some like to pick on you, I have a pretty thick skin, and I think that if you can't laugh at ghost hunting, there's something inherently funny about ghost hunting. And if you can't laugh at that, I think you're just, taking yourself too seriously. But I would say that when you go on the comedian shows, like I did the Danny Mullen show as well, which Danny and Leo I think are actually really cool dudes. And they're super intense. They, if you watch their brand of humor, it's, it's aggressive humor, and so you got to be kind of aware of what they do. But from my experiences, they definitely know where the line is between, good humor and good clean fun and like stepping over the line. The best time I've ever had as far as the paranormal shows go, Coast to Coast is always great to do. But I've had Jimmy Church both times on there and I'll Fade to Black, so he's just a great guy to do interviews with. As far as the comedic podcast between, Jim Norton. Jim Norton was a good example of, like I said, guys that they ride the line. They were skeptical, but very into it. I did their show for Sir No Face. And I was okay with their skepticism because they were still interested, you know. They were really fascinated by the story. And I'm okay with skepticism. I get it. I've said before a million times, I couldn't believe anything unless I personally experienced it. It's just how I'm built. And they certainly didn't, you know, they knew where like the line was between joking with you and making you uncomfortable. The weirdest one for me was the fighter and the kid. And I hate to say it, but it was kind of weird because of Brendan Schaub. Brian Callen, I got along with great. I consider Brian a friend. And it's interesting because Brian is like the world's biggest skeptic. I mean, he is just so skeptical. And it's funny, I've probably known him for 3 or 4 years now. I swear to God, he still has no idea what I do. It's the weirdest shit ever. Like, Callen thinks that like my goal is to make people believe in ghosts. First off, like 70% of the world already believes, you know. I have never once made any project where I was like, my goal is to make someone believe in something. To me, the excitement is trying to get to the bottom of whatever that truth is. And if you're left, like in the case of Sir No Face, like with Craig, you know, if you can just whittle every last damn thing down and you're still just left with this handful of things that you just cannot explain, that's what makes it exciting. And I've always viewed my films as more of a journey. It's more like, come along with me. I'm not going to like hand feed you my thoughts. I'm going to have you come with me on this journey. And then you can decide at the end how you feel and what you think. That's exciting to me. It's certainly not trying to make somebody believe something. But anyways, you know, Brian is, you know, super cool. He even had me come over to his house actually and ghost hunt his house for him one night. We did a paranormal investigation at his house. It was just a walk through. His ex-wife, I believe now, was really concerned that their place was haunted. It was a fun experience too. But anyways, let me get back to the part that was just kind of weird. Brendan Schaub believes in the paranormal and he's all into it. So I thought, hey, you know, this is cool. I'm gonna get along with Schaub really well. But maybe just some people are just oil and water, I guess. He just seemed like he didn't want me there. But what's weird is recently, this was like a month ago, a bunch of people texted me because they were listening to The Fighter and the Kid. And Brian Callen mentioned that came over to his house and he was talking about, you know, what occurred. There was this thing that happened with his lights that he thought was kind of weird. But anyways, like in the middle of it, Schaub starts saying to Brian, yeah, you should have him back over, but you'll have to buy him Postmates. And we should call him Ghost Daddy. Like trying to pick on me for being fat. And first off, it's like, dude, doesn't even know that I've lost like 260 pounds. I'm like 187 pounds, man. You know, and he has no idea of this. It's not even that it like offended me, but it was just like low hanging fruit. You know what I mean? It's just like the last time someone tried to pick on me for being fat was like junior high. And I don't have beef with him. And the weird thing was too is, you know, Schaub took a ton of shit for his Gringo Poppy stand-up. And I ended up watching it one night. And look, maybe I'm not the comedy connoisseur that other people are, but it wasn't like Eddie Murphy's Raw or something. But it was fine. If you're a Schaub fan, I assume you dig it. So the only contact I had had with him before he started making those jokes were I sent him a nice, text just saying, hey, I just watched your stand-up, you know. I know people are giving you a hard time, but, you know, fuck them, man. Do your thing. Keep rocking. Do you. It'll all be good. Like, very positive message. And the next thing I know, he's telling, you know, Callen to buy me Postmates and saying, refer to me as Ghost Daddy. It was weird. And again, especially from a stand-up comedian, it's like, you would think there would at least be something clever that I could laugh about too. You know, but it's like, it was just, like I said, it was low-hanging fruit, man. It was just like, why are you doing that? Why are you giving me shit? I never fucked with you. I was weird. It was strange. I always got the vibe that he didn't really care for me. I even asked Brian a couple times about it because when we did the ghost hunt at Callan's house, initially he was going to have Shab come over, and he didn't come over. And I was like, well, hey, did I do something? Did I say something wrong? Or like, is he cool? And he was like, yeah, it's all good. And so I don't know. But out of all of them, that was the weirdest one that I've done. But again, I really like Callan. He's a really smart dude too. Not so much about the things that he's not interested in, like the paranormal. He doesn't spend a lot of time digging into the facts of paranormal studies or 150 years of documented research. But I'll tell you what, I wouldn't argue with him about politics, government, the things that he's interested in. He knows his shit. So, but that was the strangest one that I've ever been on. And probably the most just flat out raw fun was Tyra, because it was just so out of the comfort zone. It was fun because it was so weird. But yeah. But anyways, yeah, good question, man. Really good question. I haven't talked about any of that shit in a long time. Okay, let's move down to the next one. Okay, Kimberly Ross from Ankeny, Iowa says, hey, Chad. I saw you on tour years ago in Ames, Iowa, which to this day was one of the most fascinating live events I've ever been to. Do you have plans once you're better to be back on the road? I would love to come see you at a show again. I would love to. I plan to. My answer is absolutely yes. I have some things I'm going through right now with my recovery that have to be fully healed before I can, which, you guys will find out soon kind of about that and what's going on. But yes, absolutely. We will definitely be back on the road again. I love the road, and there's going to be plenty of opportunities for shows with Harbingers. So, okay, Grayson Sheffield from Gloucester, England, asks if I still do private investigations. Rarely, but, in certain cases, like I did, I went over to Brian Callan's place, and there's a couple other friends here in town that I've went over to check their place out when they got concerned. But it really is just about personal relationships at this point. It's just not ghost hunting and investigating just isn't a big focus on my life. Adam Vineland from Long Island, New York says, have you noticed how many paranormal shows have been canceled? What do you think about Jack and Katrina's show getting canceled? Do you still talk to Ryan Buell? And have you ever considered getting the old gang back together? My friend, that's a lot of questions jammed into one paragraph. But yeah, I noticed a lot of shows got the can, and I figured that was coming soon. All I got to kind of do is look where the field has gone, and I don't, think I'm saying anything that would shock anyone to say that there was only a couple shows out there that were even worth watching, and it just got bad, and that's why you see the collapse of all of them. As far as Jack and Katrina's show, that's called Portals to Hell, right? Or is that right? Portals to Hell, I think. I've only seen a couple episodes of it, and I'm a Katrina fan, so I'm just a supporter, period. And it's kind of hard for me to view her show as being canceled because it had so many seasons. Shows don't go on forever. You know what I mean? It's like they have their time and then they move on. So I just view her show specifically as just she moved on and Jack did too, and I'm sure they'll be back doing another show in the future. But yeah, I like Katrina. I'm a fan and a supporter. Have I ever thought about getting the gang back together? Well, that would be a decision that would have to start with Mr. Buell. And as far as, do I still talk to Ryan? Believe it or not, For the first time in probably, I think, 8 or 9 years, I just spoke to Ryan Buell a few weeks ago. And I will say it was a very good phone call. And he sounded really good. He sounded really healthy. And from the way it sounded, I mean, authentically on the right path. You know, it's what I always hope for. It's like, I don't want to live in a world where there's no way back for people who get into hard times. I mean, everybody goes through hard things, and some worse than others, some a lot worse than others. But I always want to believe that anything is possible in the world, and that people can turn it around and you know, make the absolute best out of their time here. You know, I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about what he went through, but if you know and followed his story, you know, man, he went through some horrific shit. And, you know, he's got to live with it every day, but also, you know, rebuild a new future. And I genuinely felt like he was doing really good. And it was great to hear. But as far as getting the show back together, I've always said this. I mean, I just think there are some fractures in certain relationships. Some of them probably known, some of them unknown, like things behind the scenes that you guys don't know. That I would find it really hard to believe that Paranormal State could come back with the old crew, at least. Look, I never say never to anything, so who knows? But I don't see that in the future. I don't. But we had a great time making it, right? I mean, the fact that you guys still care, that kind of says everything, doesn't it? I mean, Paranormal State has like an X-Files audience, man. It's crazy. It's just, yeah, it was really cool. It was really cool to be a part of something really special. So, okay. Moving on. Well, here's another Paranormal State question. Larkin Thomas from Akron, Ohio asked, why was Paranormal State canceled? It was not canceled. We actually had an order for, 7 or 14 new episodes when Ryan quit. And you know, it's weird as far as why did it end? Well, the easy thing is to just say Ryan was struggling, but, you know, it's funny with time, you know, my views on all of it change. Why did it end? Saying Ryan quit is kind of like pointing out the last leg of a race, right? And ignoring everything else that happened before. I mean, if I could sum it up, I would say Paranormal State ended because it began the wrong way. It was a lot of people were taken advantage of in the beginning, and every terrible like Hollywood type story you could ever imagine like took place, you know, from people, you know, not getting their worth. I mean, in some cases, getting nothing, zero to film and to work, while others were, you know, making tons of money. And then as things, you know, the course of the show, as it became more and more popular, that ship starts getting righted. And then, you know, certain people play their hand better than others. Certain people wind up in a better position than others. And then you have jealousy that occurs. And then, you know, people start focusing on the wrong things. It's like all these things. It's like, well, why did it end? Well, like life, man. I mean, life, and fortunately, there are, people that are okay doing the wrong thing to its detriment. And that's what I think ultimately happened. That why did it end? Because it didn't start right, and it wasn't taken care of in the beginning. There's an old expression, start every relationship how you want to end it, right? Which should be on good terms. And yeah, we did something really special, and there was something really, really cool. Like I said, at our worst, Paranormal State was unwatchable. I mean, yeah, there's some episodes where I am like, oh, fuck, I can't even stomach this episode. But I truly believe that at our best, nobody did it better. Nobody. And I would say that if I was or wasn't on the show. I mean, you go back and look at like I Am 6 Part 2, even like the UFO Ranch, Darkness Falls. I mean, there were some bangers, man. Some episodes that really kind of changed a lot. So, but yeah, that's the best way I can answer that. And okay, let's see. Last question here. Colby Dennis from Van Nuys, California says, do you ever read comments on your videos or your movie releases? As a fellow filmmaker, I'm wondering how important are those comments or reviews to you? Well, the hip thing to say is, I don't give a shit, man. I make my movies for me, right? I think that's ridiculous. I make movies that I want people to see. And I tell stories that I believe need to be told. And if everybody hates them, then, I should know that. And now don't get me wrong. If Chad Calek's, if my art was a band, I would be System of a Down. I wouldn't be the Bee Gees, right? Like everybody loved the Bee Gees. That's just not the type of films that I make. I make films that are like System of a Down, where like the lane that they have is incredibly loyal to them forever, and I'm proud of that. I mean, I like that. It tells me that I'm staying true to what I do, and we've been really fortunate to have a lot of success and to have a lot of #1 releases. So to answer your question, the question is, how important is it? I think it's important as a whole. I wouldn't get caught up on any one specific comment, because you're going to have some people that worship what you do and love it. And then you have some people that absolutely hate it. And you don't want to get too into either, right? You don't want to get a big head, and you don't want to let a bad comment, cause you to lose sleep, I would just say in general, it's good to get a sense or an idea of what people think about your work. Now that's reviews. Now, as far as comments go, I love comments. I love reading comments on the podcast, and so I do these Q&As too. I love to see where people think and to read their point of view. So yeah, I think all that stuff's totally important. And if you're a filmmaker, yeah, I think, if you don't care about what people think, then you don't got to release films. You can make your own movies for yourself and watch them in your house. You know what I mean? But yeah, I definitely care what people think, and I always want to make sure my next film is better than my last and do the best job I can for you guys and tell the stories that I think are most valuable and carry the strongest life lesson. So, but great questions, guys. Thank you so much once again. And what more can I say, man? You guys are awesome. As always, if you have questions, just fire them away on the comments or just on Instagram. Let me know what your questions are, and I will keep track of them and compile them, and we'll do it again in another couple months. Okay? I hope you guys enjoyed this episode number 180 of the In a Crowded Room podcast. I will be back soon with more. All the best.